Peace. This is Jamal Robinson with 720astrology.com. So, this is just going to be a brief discussion about the upcoming solar eclipse, annular solar eclipse at 21 degrees of Libra on Saturday at, I think it's Saturday at 12:54 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, I'm going to pull up the chart for the solar eclipse and we'll chat about it briefly. So, first, what is a solar eclipse? A solar eclipse occurs at a new moon. A new moon is when the sun and moon are at the same degree. It's a time of initiation. It's a time of seed planting. So, when they are together, the same degree, the moon moving directly in front of the sun will block out the sun's light during an eclipse. That means the moon is directly between the path of the sun's light to the earth. Now, because it's an annular eclipse, that means the moon is not completely blocking out the sun's light. It will leave a little ring around the outside, kind of like Lord of the Ring. So the sun's light will not be completely blocked out. Why is an eclipse so significant? Well, the solar eclipse means that the sun's light is inhibited. The sun represents vitality, for one. Here on the earth, as an earth being, we are dependent on the sun's light to maintain life here on the planet. Without the sun, there's no vegetation. Without vegetation, there's no food for animals to eat. And because we are mostly omnivorous, we eat both vegetables or vegetation and animals. Some people are completely vegetarian or vegan, but wherever you fall on the food chain, we're dependent on the sun. The animals eat the plants. We eat the animals. Or certain animals eat plants and then certain other animals eat those animals. So everything's dependent on the sun. The sun is decoded or broken down and turned into food, literally, through what we learned about in science, elementary, called photosynthesis. It is the process of a plant breaking down sunlight, reconfiguring it, and turning it into food. So, literally, the sun is the primary life giver here on this planet. So, when the sun's light is blocked for any amount of time, it's serious business. It means that the life force is cut off from the earth, even if for a few minutes. Now, does that mean that everything dies, that there's complete chaos? No, it does not. But it is something to be taken seriously, to be treated with a measure of caution, but more importantly, to be respected. And I think that's the message that I really want to convey, is about respect, not fear, not recklessness, but respect, which respect really does etymologically mean fear, but it's a healthy type of fear. It's not a crippling fear. Now, with the sun's light being blocked out and it being at the south node, which the south node means a movement from comfortability, a movement from uh, momentary status quo. It is a flushing type of energy, south node. But let's be clear that that whenever we're dealing with an axis, which astrology to a great deal, we're looking at axes. The 12 are really 6 axes. So we must be careful to not fall into the trap of looking at things about either or, being very bipolar in our approach. We need to understand that each part of an axis is necessary for complete and adequate function. If you're driving your car and you have one wheel or one tire functional and the other it isn't, then the vehicle's not operational. So we need to understand, even with the concept of north and south node, just from pure common sense, the south node does not mean what we abandon. The south node does not just mean, oh, this is bad, north node is good. And this is just apart from astrological um, rationality, this is common sense. The south node is relative to the north node is a shifting of focus, a shifting of focal point, a shifting of of balance. A shifting instead of balance, a shifting of distribution is a better word, in the hopes of achieving some semblance of balance. So we're in a shift to the north node in Aries right now, which is a shift to looking at how our collective and individual I am shows up, the health of the ego, um, the thickness of the facade, the thickness of the mask, or thinness, as in what type of mask are we wearing? Are we nothing more than a facade? Um, Inspiration. We're looking at an assessment of courage. We're taking inventory of leadership, the ability to assert and initiate, North Node and Aries. But that should not be at the expense of the institution of relationship. And when we talk relationship, it's now leading us back to the sign of Libra, where we are having the solar eclipse Saturday afternoon. And let's highlight that here. The eclipse will be at 21 degrees of Libra. At the same time, we will have the South Node at 25 of Libra, naturally opposing the North Node at 25 of Aries. We also have in the mix, we have Chiron at 17 of Aries, opposing Mercury at 17 of Libra. So this again places emphasis on how we are handling relationship. Now, It's interesting because the ruler of Libra is Venus, and Venus uh, has recently come out of retrograde and shadow and has moved into Virgo in its fall in Virgo. So Venus has been getting a lot of work. Venus has squared Uranus 3 times during its retrograde phase. So there's been some learning and conflict around its uh, transit through Leo. And now that it completes its transit and its retrograde and its shadow, it's now in Virgo. But this is a more practical Venus. So at the time of the eclipse, it's almost like it's a reminder to be level headed and rational and practical, and as best as possible to measure our communication. Again, because we have Mercury, the planet of communication, short distance travel, um, opposing Chiron, which is a wound partly around who am I? A wound around identity. I was talking about that mask. Maybe the mask is so thick and layered because there's a fear of being exposed. So maybe if this fear signature resonates, then it can cause a lot of egoism, a lot of unnecessary combative energy. So we have all of this in the mix at the time of the eclipse. Additionally, we have Venus as the ruler of the eclipse is separating from its opposition to Saturn. It's at 5 degrees at the time of the eclipse. Saturn's still retrograde at 0 of Pisces. So there is still um, an orb of affect here, 5 degrees. So you're still getting a little bit of influence from Saturn on Venus, but it's not as strong as it was pre eclipse. But I don't think Venus opposing Saturn is all that bad. Saturn is the planet associated with the opposition aspect. And I like to liken Saturn to weight training. When we go into the gym to weight train, there's an understanding that we have to put ourselves under tension. And so the opposition is tension between the two poles. It's like pulling the guitar strings real tight. Now, the danger is that there can be a break, but if done correctly, this tension that is applied with Saturn and in a Saturnian aspect, which is an opposition, this tension can be used to grow something, to build something, to to cover some ground, to create a structure for the future. And this structure is has a lot to do with relationship. So there's a need here to have open, honest conversation, to fight against the urge towards combativeness where it's not necessary, and also to be still. There's no need for gloom and doom around an eclipse, because for many of us who at some point weren't studying astrology, unless you're some prodigy who came out the womb reading astrology books, there was some point where you didn't know about astrology or you weren't versed in it. whatever that phase was of you not knowing about it, you lived through eclipse seasons and you're still here. Now, things may have happened that we can go back and look at and see how they correlate with an eclipse, but you're still here. So I'm saying all that to say that let's be careful about gloom and dooming it up around the eclipses because they come. They come every year. Um, my approach is, like I said earlier, respect, to be respectful of the energy. It's good just to live your life like that anyway, to be respectful of the energies that are at play. And with that said, this is a good time to be quiet, but at the same time, when communication is warranted or necessary, to have communication. But, because I've been talking about the communication in relationship, but that's in house. That's in house communication. That's private. I think there's a great need for private communication. That could be you and your mate, or it can be you with yourself. Conversation, quiet, still away, because a lot of people will not be able to um, effectively or positively handle the energy, and they're going to be bugging out. It never fails. But I think the safe way to play it is to not be shaking in your boots and waiting for something bad to happen, but to be mindful and respectful and to work on building the temple, because Saturn is a builder. Saturn will be opposing the ruler of the eclipse at the time of the eclipse. So this energy can be channeled into building something because it is a solar eclipse. Again, this means it is happening at a new moon. As we see here, the sun and the moon have met up. And at a new moon, we are planting seeds. And so we're closing out a cycle of 19 years and we're starting a new cycle, new opportunities, new doors opening, old cycles completing, moving out, transitioning, clearing out from old things. Everything must change in this reality. Everything must change. Everything is vibrating. Everything is moving. That's one of the 7 laws of this reality. The law of vibration. Everything is moving. Everything is in rhythm. So let's keep that in mind as we approach this eclipse occasion. Now, an added thing, I'm going to go back over to the full screen for a minute, is that an added thing is that to think about is this eclipse occurring at 21 degrees of Libra. And if we go to, this is Dane Rudyard, an astrological mandala. I'm going to go here to 21 degrees, and it says, a Sunday crowd enjoying the beach. Keynote, a revivifying contact with the mother force of nature and of social togetherness. The sea is the vast matrix from which living organisms originally emerged. it also symbolizes the collective unconscious, the matricial envelope of the biosphere within which consciousness takes individualized forms. The consciousness of human beings is given specific form by the culture in which they live and the particular occupations they carry on in everyday work. But it is very good and healthful for their minds to become revitalized by collective experiences and deep feelings of undifferentiated unity as they merge in the vast refreshment of the planetary mother, where she is most dynamic, unlimited, and unconfined by boundaries. Quite poetic. Dane Rudyard always is. What sense can we make of that? Well, there's this mother theme that he keeps talking about. And I should have just let the chart stay up, but we'll go back to the chart. And we'll notice that this T-square here, we have it between the nodal axis and Pluto. There's a T-square. Okay. So with the T-square in effect between Libra, Capricorn, and Aries, it then has a release point in Cancer. And Cancer is what? The mother. Now, what's interesting is that the mother principle ties back to the ancient goddess Isis, who is iconicized with the moon. And the moon rules the sign of Cancer. Oh, I did that wrong. The moon rules Cancer. But what is interesting is that we go back to the works of Godfrey Higgins, 19th century scholar. And he points out that Venus is also referred to as Alma Venus, as in the mother. So therefore, between the moon, it's my pen, between the moon and Venus, we have this motherly, feminine, matriarchal principle shared between the two. Emphasis with this T-square is being placed on the Cancer aspect of our lives. What are we nurturing? What are we growing? What's the nature of the soil under our feet? What are we rooted in? There's a lot of building energy here at this eclipse. Something has to be cleared away so that something can be built. And then what remains, our job is to make sure that that structure is sound. It's solid. In some regards, we're walking through a major gateway into the future with this eclipse in Libra. And we want to make sure that we are teamed up with the right people to walk through this portal, this doorway. And possibly leading up to this, what's been going on is that things, people, situations have been getting cut away. You think about Venus is ruling the North Node. Venus has been locked into this retrograde. It's been in squares. Like Venus has been taking some lumps. We're separating the wheat from the chaff, I feel like. And I think what emerges on the other side of this eclipse is destiny. With that in mind, be still during this eclipse. Be meditative. If you pray, pray. Or do both, whatever you're into, that's going to steal your energy. Talk to the people who matter. Disregard those who don't. Solidify and do what's necessary to strengthen the relationships with those whom relationships matter. Further solidifying this strong building energy, we have Mars and Saturn trine each other at the time of the eclipse. When Mars and Saturn get together, it is like the wild nephew and the uncle. The nephew's got all this testosterone and just ready to do whatever. But the uncle is seasoned. He's been through the game. And he's going to school this young man about how to utilize all this energy in the most productive manner. He's going to school this young man about the long game. This is Mars and Saturn hooking up in harmony. This is the fire to initiate and the staying power to see it through. And this is coming from an emotional space. So we're talking about passion and imagination. We're talking about transformation and spiritual intuitive fusion. Scorpio and Pisces. So here's an opportunity to take this very determined Mars in Scorpio, determined but not as reckless as Mars in Aries. Mars in Scorpio is scientific, it's surgical. It is a Mars, it's a dangerous Mars. It's a Mars who is plotting and more methodical. But this can be used positively. Coupled with Saturn, this can be used to create a drive that comes from this emotional space to get something done. So, few things to think about with this eclipse coming up. We're wrapping up 2023. There's all types of stuff going on in the news, and I think a lot of things are just distractions. What matters is what's going on in your world, because at the end of the day, that's all you can control. How is your energy being dispersed? How is it being managed? How are you managing your relationships? How are you managing life in general. Who are you? And where are you moving based on who you are? These are things that matter. Things for us to continue to reflect on during this eclipse season that we are moving through. Mindful and respectful. I'm available for private readings through my website, 720astrology.com. As always, know the stars to know yourself. Jamal Robinson. Peace.